Hello, my name is Emmanuel Williams, and today we're going to explore culturally relevant data through a map of segregation and redlining. This activity is important because it allows teachers to talk about diversity, which is a sensitive subject within the classroom, also use real data, even though it's from 2010 census data, as well as visualize the statistical concept rather than just having students calculate values. Before we jump right into the activity, it's ideal for us to define what is a culturally relevant data set. A culturally relevant data set is a data set that students deem as relevant, something that they can relate to, which is imperative in terms of their learning. Culturally relevant data sets are really important because it allows teachers to create an inclusive classroom because we're creating content that relates to all populations, which gives them a higher chance of being successful. This activity uses a CRD, which is a map of segregation. And so in order for us to start the activity, you have to first choose a city. And then I choose New York City, which we'll see in a moment. And then you eventually ask the students, what do you know about the city? So you get them to get excited about the city, get to know about the city, especially if they've been there. That makes the activity run extremely smooth. From there, you ask them to recognize the metadata regarding the website. You know, who's the author, things that matter, who published the article, where's the data coming from. And last but not least, you get the students to see how the actual website works. So you can actually host it on one screen, which we'll see in a moment, and essentially go through questions of getting the students to see how the actual website works. So here now we can actually see the newspaper is the New York Times. The date is July 8th, 2015. The name of the article is Mapping Segregation. And the authors are Matthew, Amanda, Tom. It's coming from the 2010 census data, and the websites to help host this app website is Social Explorer and Google Maps. So it's very important for students to at least recognize that metadata before diving into the activity. Second thing to do when you're actually working with this activity is to mention this actual legend here. And so what happens here is that you have a breakdown of the races, okay, according to the 2010 census, and it also tells you what each dot represents. So if you scroll back or scroll down, it actually zooms out, and so the actual dots are now represent more individuals. If you you scroll up, it actually represents less individuals. Okay, and so from there, I then ask students to generally tell me what's going on in Brooklyn on this side, what's going on in Brooklyn on this side, as well as what's going on in Manhattan, and so for them to give general ideas regarding the data that they see. From there, I let students know what a census tract is, and I say that a census tract, let's say a census tract is a sample. From there, I ask the student what's the observational unit then. Observational unit would then be a student, or a person, my apologies. From there, we say what's the variable of interest. The variable of interest is going to be the person's race. And then I ask, then what's this idea of diversity? More specifically, what's this idea of racial diversity? If we were to see racial diversity within a sample, what would it look like? And students brainstorm together and they think through the process. And some students think that it should be equally likely. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at that, what that means in terms of our app. If we expect the percentage breakdown for each race to be equally likely, this would be the expected proportion or percentages. Whereas if we were to see 20% for each of them, for each of the races, we'll put it as such, and this is the sample size. So if we go ahead and calculate, you'll see this actual chi-square distribution with the p-value of 1 because we don't have no evidence to reject the null hypothesis with a test statistic of 0. So as you can imagine, let's say that someone believes that there should be maybe 40% Asian, or let's say 30% Asian and 10% black, right? Something along those lines. Okay, you get a test statistic, you get a p-value. So you can try different scenarios on what you expect, as well as what you observe based on the census tract. And you can also control for the sample size. Okay. So how you could use this in the actual classroom? You could actually just modify the expected based on the state or the country in terms of the racial breakdown. You could use this actual activity just like how you saw it. Or you can also not necessarily mention diversity, but just if it's too much, you can scale back and just say, okay, this is the racial breakdown. You don't have to have the students define what diversity or racial diversity is. Or if you want to go a little deeper in terms of the before and after and why the things are the way they are, let's talk about Black and Latinx migration to some of these cities or cities that are near that you decide to use, as well as the implications of why things are segregated and what ramifications of things being segregated imply. Thank you.